What's up, Algebra 2? I am sitting on the couch here at the house, and I was going to try to help you with the homework if you need some support. So it is hard for me to draw on this and it look nice, so I'm just going to put the points that you need, and you can obviously connect them, and I'll try to connect them by tomorrow. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Today we talked about the idea of vertex form. This is vertex form up here, and we really need to understand that vertex form can be recognized when you have these parentheses that's around the x part, and then we have it squared with some type of floating value in the back sometimes, not always. But this is what we want to really recognize as vertex form, and it really helps us figure out how things are moving, like left or right, up or down. And when I say things, I really mean specifically the vertex. And the vertex is the most interesting point of a quadratic. It's that turnaround point that's either at the bottom if it's a minimum or at the top if it's a maximum. So let's kind of talk about it. The hard part is the h value. The h value controls left or right, and it is dangerous. It is technically backwards from whatever you would think it would be. So if you think minus is left and plus is right, well, normally you'd be correct on a number line, but with input, we'll see that when you plug a value in there, it kind of has the counter effect of what you think it would do. Now the back number, k, this value helps us understand up and down. This tells us if it went up, if it's plus, and minus if it's down. And honestly, that's pretty intuitive. Plus does mean up, and minus does mean down for most people when they're thinking about it. So this one's a little safer to understand, okay? So let's kind of jump into it and see some examples. So this plus 1, this would feel right to most people, but this actually means left 1. So not the origin, but just moving left 1 right here. This is telling us where our very first value is going to be. And you can even kind of test it. Like this value is -1. If you were to plug in -1 right here, -1 plus 1 would be 0, and 0 squared is 0. And so that's this point right here, -1, 0. So today we talked about the odd pattern, the 1, 3, 5, and that can just really help you kind of figure out the quadratic's next few points pretty quickly. So let's go up 1 and over 1, up 3 and over 1, and if I could have, I would have gone up 5 and over 1 for the next point. Now quadratics have what's called a symmetric idea. So you have an axis of symmetry that kind of cuts right through this U-shaped graph. And so this is kind of our final graph. It's going through those points. Like I said, it's kind of hard to draw with my mouse pad here. But basically, we should have said right here that this went left 1. Okay? So that's if you have a parenthesis and there's a value inside. If it's on the outside, the value's a little safer. This right here is telling us that we're going up 1. And so we can test it at 0. If you were to plug in 0, 0 squared would be 0, plus 1 would be 1. So our very first point, thinking about input-output, would be right here at 0, 1. We can then use our odd pattern to go up 1 over 1, up 3 and over 1, and that happens in both directions. Okay, so go ahead and connect that for me. I'm not going to do that on every problem because it's kind of frustrating to try to do it, and it looks kind of ugly. So I'll do that on the smartboard tomorrow with my pen. So come down here and let's do up 1. Okay, so let's see what happens when you have 2 at one time. So there's actually 2 shifts going on here. So again, let's be careful about values on the inside that make it go left or right. So technically this value does not mean left, it means we're going right 2 units. And like the middle one, plus means you're going up, so we're actually going up 2 units as well. Okay. So let's start at the origin and let's find our vertex by looking at the vertex form. It's going right 2, it's going up 2. So there's our point that we want to start with, called the vertex. And here comes the odd pattern, up 1 over 1, up 3 and over 1, and let's do it the other way as well. So there you go. There's your U-shaped graph that you can kind of fill in on your paper. So this one actually has 2 shifts, and that's why I gave us 2 lines here. So technically it went right 2, not 1, but 2. And then it also went up 2. So those are two shifts based on the given equation. So I want you to try these, the one on the left as well as the one on the right, but we'll talk about the one in the middle since there is something different about that one. So we can look at the middle part again. That's kind of the dangerous part. Minus doesn't mean left. It technically means right, like we saw on the other ones. And the plus we talked about means up. But that one's okay. That one's a little safer to trust. So I'll do that in green. So let's go right 1, up 5. Right here. Now, what happens when you are using a negative in the front like that, that's called a reflection. So anything that was facing up is now facing down, okay? Because when you put a negative in the front, whenever this number pops out, it becomes a negative value. So that means as you plug in bigger and bigger x values, or technically smaller, because it goes forever left and right, when you square that number, it becomes really positive for just a moment. That negative hits it, and then it becomes really, really negative. So this is technically kind of going down forever and ever and ever, and it has a limit of how high it can go, which we call that a maximum. So we can just say that, okay, this is a negative 1. So that odd pattern of 1, 3, and 5, we just multiply that by negative 1, and that forces all the values to go down. So down 1 over 1, down 3 and over 1, and then this one we can do the 5, down 5 and over 1. Make sure I did that right. Yeah. So that's actually happening in both directions. Okay. So you can kind of connect that parabola, that U-shaped graph that we call a quadratic. And so there are 3 shifts. Okay. First, we're going to call this shift right. So we went right 1. It also went up 5, and that last one is a reflection. Uh-oh. Reflection. I can hear my stomach probably. I'm hungry. Time to eat. Alright, so I want you to try the 2 on the end. So I want you to make sure that you can demonstrate some ability and some skill here. I want you to try these as well. And I'll let you kind of tackle that one. This negative 2 basically is multiplying that odd pattern by negative 2. So instead of going up 1, you'll go down 2. Okay. Instead of going down 3 the next time, 3 times 2, you should really go down 6. So we'll check your points. And if you want to check a point by plugging in the x value, you should get out the y value from the problem, like I've been talking about. And so this very long-looking question is really talking about, please mark and check all of the boxes that qualify as a transformation. So I think there should be 2 here. And honestly, there's never a stretch of 1. There's never a compression of 1. These numbers should be greater than 1 if it's a stretch, like 2, 3, 4, something like that. That's technically what we would define something as a stretch, not 1. And compressed means it's a fraction. So like maybe 1/2. If that 1/2 was in the front, if you had a value less than 1, or maybe 2/3, that would be considered a compression. We haven't seen too many examples of that, but basically that makes it a lot wider instead of more vertical or stretched more up and down. So tell me which one of these you think this means. What does that represent? Is that more left, right, up, or down? And then what does that minus represent? Last thing, we talked about flip keep. Flip keep is a quick way to understand when you're looking at an equation. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulty here. This sign for the first one is, again, kind of lying to you. The value that makes this 0 is not negative. It's got to be positive. So this value, we kind of want to change its sign. Okay. And then this one, we kind of want to keep its sign because that is more of the up and down part that does follow its sign. Plus is up, minus is down. But it's this other one that's more dangerous that you really want to be careful with. And so go ahead and pick the right answer here. That represents the vertex point of where that would turn around. All right, well, thank you for watching my video. We're going to review a little bit of this tomorrow, maybe add a little piece. But I think we're going to have to go back to domain and range since that seemed to be something that we were struggling with in our informal assessment on quizzes today. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you plan on coming to the football game tomorrow. It's a big game against Fulton. See ya.